Hey guys, it's Harry from Inside Boxing Brain, and today's video is a little bit different. The subject is why we don't see Asian or British Asian representation in sports, especially in England, in the British Isles. And I wanted to do this video because I feel like me and my family were an exception to the rule. For example, my older brother is an Olympic sprinter. He's technically the fastest British Asian in the United Kingdom, and he's represented at the South Asian Games, he's represented at the London Olympics, and he as an athlete has dedicated his life to the sport. On top of that, my father is an ex-pro cricketer, and me myself, I did boxing up to an amateur level. So I feel that I am in a reasonably good position to talk about this subject. I have broken it down into 4 key areas, and I am going to get into them. But before I do, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, drop me a comment in the comment section, and hit that thumbs up button as well if you like today's subject and topic. Now, the 4 key areas that I'm going to drill into are as follows. The first is family and culture. Number 2 is role models. Number 3 is racial stigmas, and number 4 finally comes in at opportunities or lack of opportunities. Now, I'm going to drill into these subjects in a little bit more detail and provide some insights as to why I feel currently we have a lack of British Asian representation in sports. Now, you only really have to look at sports like football, the Premier League, to understand that there are no British Asians, or there are very few. I think there's one guy who plays for Manchester United's B team who is Pakistani and Palestinian. But having said that, I'm talking about the British Asian community, so your Pakistanis, your Indians, your Bangladeshis, your Sri Lankans. Let's just say brown representation, South Asian, brown-skinned representation in British sports. I feel like there's a massive deficit of athletes coming through, or athletes that have been given opportunities to perform at the highest level. And football is a prime example. You just need to go to the 5-a-side clubs or the 7-a-side clubs where people are kicking footballs around with their friends in these small communities, whether it's Manchester, Bradford, London, Birmingham, Leicester, and so on, for you to realise that there's so much talent in the British Asian community, sporting wise, that it's almost alarming and shocking that you don't see any of that talent translate into the professional ranks or further into the professional game. Whether that be football, whether that be rugby, whether that be tennis, badminton, hockey, all major sports in the UK, there's very small proportion of British Asian representation in the upper echelons of the sport. And as a community, if we look at it, the British Asian community is second only, I think, to the indigenous British or British English community in the UK. And I feel like there must be, and there has to be, high levels of talent sporting wise in this community for us to be able to push and champion and celebrate, rather than us feel, and many people feel, and I'm the one talking about it, but I'm sure many people feel it, how many British Asians are football fans? Why are there no Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, or just brown-skinned players on the pitch representing? I don't understand. Are you trying to say that all Asians are shit at football? Because that's definitely not true. You know, I just have to look at my own family to look at how physically able, capable and athletic we are. And if you look at the mass of our community, there's so much variation and genetic strengths within us. There has to be key members that stand out, and we're starting to see it now in boxing. But I'm saying that needs to translate. So I want to get into the 4 key points, and I want to talk a little bit why about if we were trying to justify a reason as to why Asians or British Asians aren't getting the notoriety, the credibility, or the spotlight, or the platform rather, in British sports. Why? Let's try and give some examples to why it might be. Instead of always pointing outwards, let's try and look inwards and consider angles as to why maybe our community isn't excelling or growing in this area. Now, the first one that I want to look at is family and culture. And the reason why I bring this point up is because within the British Asian community, there is a lot of weight and pressure put on the family tree in terms of appeasing your parents and doing things which are going to benefit your family in terms of your family unit. We are team players. We don't just leave the house at 16 and say, thanks mum and dad, see you later. We have a degree of responsibility and loyalty towards that unit or that household. And due to that, it's a two-way street. Your parents provide and give you a platform your entire life. You as a person, or as a young British Asian or a young British Asian female, male or female growing up, you feel a level of responsibility, and that means that you have to give back. And by giving back, I don't mean providing monetary funds, because not all families ask for that, but what they do ask for is for them to be included in your key life decisions. So any decisions that you're going to be taking which will have a direct impact on your future, whether that's your career, your education, your relationships, they feel and they want a certain level of input, because as your parents or as your family, they feel like they have your best interests at heart. Now, whether they do or whether they don't, every family is different. However, what we have to say is that a lot of young British Asians grow up with those thought processes going through their minds, which then results in them having to approach their parents with the question of, Mum, Dad, I want to pursue a career in a sport. Now, when that question gets brought up, a lot of Asian parents, people who are from the generation above us, tend to feel that sports isn't necessarily a secure career path to go into or for you to pursue. Now, there's pros and there's cons, and you could agree or disagree with them. However, one thing that I will say is that Asian households and Asian families put more weight on two things, that is education and business. And if you look at the Asian community, they're the two key areas where you see the Asian community really growing and excelling. And that's why I feel that in the early stages, in the infancy stages, where these kids are growing up with that sport in prowess, they're getting pushed more towards education, and they're getting pushed more towards commercial or business enterprise as a secure way to provide for themselves, their families, and their whole family tree or their unit. Now, the second point that I want to move on to is relate into the facts in general, because if you look at British sports, there are a lack of role models for British Asians to look up to. And I think that plays a clear role in inspiring young people. When you want to inspire a younger generation to go into a particular discipline, if they look at that discipline and see people who look like them, who come from the same countries as them, who have the same religions and cultures as them, progressing and being, celebrated and, doing really well, progressing in their careers and being super successful, I think that inspires the younger generation to want to pursue a career in a particular sport. And due to the lack of representation of British Asians within sporting on a British scene, I feel like a lot of British Asians feel like maybe they're not as able or capable to progress into the field of sports. When in reality, I feel like they are more than able and capable, but they get put off because they watch sports and they don't see anybody who looks like them. And I think there's a two-way street there. I think it's the fact that a lot of Asians don't push themselves to go down those roads, and I think it's also that a lot of the people who champion athletes and give athletes opportunities and platforms don't give Asians. We're back. Sorry we cut off there, run out of storage. So I was saying that I feel like a lot of the platform providers don't always give British Asians the same opportunities that potentially they give to other communities. And I don't think that there is any particular real, focus on that, other than the fact that it's high risk. How do you know that the community or the people that you're giving these opportunities are going to pull through if they're not performing or attending or, joining the clubs? And I understand it's a two-way street with that, because my older brother, as an Olympic athlete, he had to travel the country up and down to all of these events, and sometimes he wasn't getting paid to do them. And my parents, my dad was having to travel with him, and it costs a lot of money to buy the equipment, running spikes, all the nutritional food and supplements and vitamins and minerals and healthcare that goes along with it. Can be very expensive. And I think a lot of Asian families maybe think that it doesn't seem like they're going to get a return on investment. Therefore, when the platform and the people who work for these sports companies or the companies that scout the talent, they look at it as they're not investing in us or the sport or themselves, so why would we give them the opportunity? So I understand it's a two-way street. Now, having said that, I do want to say that there has been Asian representation in some sports. So cricket and boxing, we have to say that there has been some clear standout athletes over the years. Notably, you could say Amir Khan, notably you could say Prince Naseem Hamed, and now there have been many, many, many more. And in cricket as well, we have to say that there is clear Asian representation, and that is because the South Asian countries tend to champion the sport of cricket, which is understandable. But I'm talking about British Asians, and within the British Asian community, football, rugby, boxing, these are all massive sports. They love these sports, they follow these sports massively. And even in athletics, there are so many Asians currently training, performing, working to become elite athletes. My older brother has actually created an entire spin-off business, not for the Asian community, but to help younger athletes, provide new opportunities for younger athletes. So it's a very interesting time. But the next point is racial stigmas. Now, I want to talk about this point because I almost feel like in media in general, you don't necessarily see much South Asian representation, whether that be on the big screen, whether that be on just television, or whether that be on the sporting field. And I feel like that attaches a racial stigma to our community, which makes people almost feel like they shouldn't be in these areas or they shouldn't push in these areas. And I do feel now that those stigmas are being broken, especially in my generation. I'm seeing a lot of Asians pushing into TV, into media, into radio, into music, into sports, into fashion. And it's great to see, but I still feel like we are only touching the surface when it comes to addressing the fact that there needs to be more Muslim and more Asian and more brown representation within sports and media in the UK. And it doesn't matter which country you're from, brown is brown. I'm talking about South Asian countries. And I feel like the racial stigmas attached to us as a community prevent us from wanting to excel in any sports, because we almost feel like we are unathletic, we're not strong, or we're not built the way other people are built, we're not strong as other racial groups, which is bullshit, to be quite honest with you. Man's built hella strong. And I know many guys who are built differently. They are beasts. They just need to push themselves in these particular areas. whether it be the gym, weightlifting, bodybuilding, boxing, football, cricket, tennis, rugby, badminton, whatever it is, swimming, Olympics, whether that's sprinting, long jumping, high jumping, whatever you are doing as a discipline, Asian people have some sick DNA, and we need to push our children and the younger generation to go into sports, not only to benefit their health and well-being and mental health and mental well-being, but to help them provide opportunities for their younger generation, so the kids around them, the people that they look up to in their communities, to say, look, sports needs fair representation, and Asian representation is currently lacking. So I feel like when the gates break and the floodgates open, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of like-for-like, prime, competitive, elite athletes that can compete in these upper tiers of the sport. Now, to wrap this video off, the last point that I want to cover, and by the way, if you agree or disagree with anything that I'm talking about today, just drop your comments in the comment section below. I am interested to know what people think, because, you know, for me, I am just talking about it from my perspective, which is an opinion. And the only way I can learn or I can see other perspectives is by hearing your opinions and thoughts as well. So do drop your comments in the comment section below if you've got anything to add to this conversation. But the last thing that I want to touch on to wrap this up is the point around opportunities. Now, those are opportunities that are provided from the home, from the parents, from the caregivers, and also opportunities that are provided from the talent scouts, from the clubs, from the teams, from the gyms. And I feel like the tide is again turning with this, because in boxing in particularly, we are starting to see a lot of Asian boxers come through. And notably, you could say that the Aziz brothers, who have been championed by Amir Khan, are, you know, today's next greats in the Asian community, or they've got an opportunity to do at least. And the reason why that ties into this point is because Amir Khan has given them that opportunity by championing them. And yes, Sky Sports have got behind them, but I feel like that is because they were given the social media clout. So opportunities need to be created by yourself. Opportunities don't just fall into your hands. So for young athletes, for young British Asian athletes, one thing that I would say is paramount and important for you is to try and capture the support of your community, whether that's through social media, or whether that's through attending events, or, you know, being a social role model to people within your community. Because if you can generate organic opportunities for yourself by having lots of eyes and ears listening and watching what you're doing, it's going to help you get an opportunity to stand on the platforms like Sky Sports, like Boxer, like DAZN, like Showtime, Matchroom Sports, you know, BT Boxing, BT Box Office or BT Boxing. The list goes on, Queensbury Boxing. There's so many different professional outfits in the UK, and that's just in the boxing field that I'm talking. If we look at football, rugby, tennis, badminton, basketball, the Olympics, there are so many different people and opportunities that you could create for yourself if you just tie in your community into your activity and be proud of what you're doing and inspire others. So drop me a comment in the comment section below, guys. Sorry for the break in the video. I'm going to try and stitch this together. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this content, and I'm really interested to chat to you in the comment section, because I hope this does provoke some great conversations. Guys, it's Harry from Inside Boxing Brain, and yes, you guessed right, we'll be back for another video very soon.